We'll call to order the House Standing Committee on Appropriations and Revenue, meeting number 2, Tuesday, February the 18th, 2025, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, Annex Room 149. Please call the roll.
Representative Banta.
Present.
Representative Bojanowski.
Here.
Representative Bridges. Here. Representative Brown. Representative Dietz.
Here.
Representative Fleming.
Present.
Representative Freeland.
Present.
Representative Fugit.
Here.
Representative Gentry. Here. Representative Hart. Representative Lockett.
Present.
Representative McPherson. Representative Riley. Here. Representative Stevenson. Representative Thomas.
Present.
Representative Truitt.
Here.
Representative Upchurch.
Here.
Representative Williams.
Here.
Vice Chair Bowling.
Here.
Vice Chair Bray. Present. Chair Petrie.
Here.
Representative McPherson.
Thank you all for coming in. And do we have any members seeking recognition? Before we begin, I believe Representative Truitt had an issue.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I would like to introduce my intern for this session from the University of Louisville, Miss Elia Trocan. Thank you, Elia.
Oh, please stand up so we can see you and we can properly embarrass you. Very good. Thank you for coming out and helping us. Any other members seeking recognition? Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce my wife, Lisa, and her good friend, Teresa Myatt, and Teresa's granddaughter, Evelyn, who's going to be a page for me today.
Very good. Please welcome. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Any other members seeking recognition? Seeing none, first up on the agenda today, we have House Bill 2, an act relating to the taxation of currency and bullion currency and declaring an emergency. Sponsor Representative T.J. Roberts, if you will, come to the table. Introduce yourself for the record. Anyone else that may be presenting with you, and then I'll place you under oath.
Representative T.J. Roberts, District 66.
Right hand, please. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed right after I say this. Just to box this in context real quick, we had passed a bill, a revenue bill, that, like most other states, exempted currency and bullion transactions from sales tax. That was entered by the Secretary of State without veto. There was a purported veto on a revenue bill line item. Then there was an opinion by the Attorney General that confirmed that was not a real veto. It was purported. And now we have some issues that have come up since that happened last session last year. And I believe the bill attempts to address that. Please proceed. Second. We have a motion on PHS 2 and a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? And she is looking for, Representative Bojanowski is looking for clarification on the sub. We've already started vote on that. It's been all approved. All say aye. Aye. All opposed. That committee sub has been approved. It is in front of us, and you'll need to explain that, as I think you were prepared to do. Make sure we explain the PHS 2. Please proceed. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 2, as amended by PHS 2, is about vindicating a tax exemption we already ratified last year, doing justice for those who have been forced to pay taxes that are not authorized by our laws, and making clear that our separation of powers still stands. All that PHS 2 ultimately does is just clarifies the language. It's mostly technical corrections. The one part that's theoretically a substantive change is it just clarifies what provisions are retroactive. It makes clear that the $1,000 penalty per day is not retroactive. That only goes into effect upon adoption of this bill. So everything else, the refund action alone, is retroactive for those who have paid the taxes since August 1st, 2024. I can open the floor to questions.
Senator Bojanowski, you have a comment or question?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for clarifying some things. This is way out of my purview of topics that I know about. Do you have a total of the total sales of currency and bullion and gold bars for the last fiscal year and for the current fiscal year to date?
Representative, I have submitted an open records request, and I am awaiting that answer. I'd be happy to share that with you. That being said, the budget that we passed last session accounted for this tax exemption, so the refund itself would not have an impact on our current budget.
If I may ask one brief follow-up,
Yes, please.
is there a fiscal note for this bill?
There is a fiscal note, yes.
Included with the packet, you'll see a narrative form that says estimated impact memorandum.
Thank you.
Representative Gentry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was not aware there was a fiscal note, so pardon me here, I'm going through this.
Do you want me to come back to you?
No, I will ask another question. This is tough for me because I'm not an attorney. I'll be the first to say that. I'm a scientist, I'm not an attorney. So I'm trying to understand the situation here. Hopefully you can help me understand this. So we had a bill exempting the sales tax for purchase of bullion, which I was a supporter of, by the way. That bill didn't move, and that bill was basically put in another bill toward the end of session, the revenue bill, which we call it, and the governor did a line item veto on this issue, and there seems to be a disagreement on whether he has that power. I've tried to talk to attorneys about this since I'm not an attorney, and I'm getting different opinions. I know the Attorney General offered his opinion, and the governor was once an Attorney General, and he has a different opinion, and this just seems like, to me, something that maybe the courts should weigh in on instead of us trying to most of us in the General Assembly aren't attorneys, and I feel like this is a pretty deep legal issue, and I don't want to litigate this in a committee room with tons of questions, and I'm sure we don't have time for that. My big concern, I'm trying to figure out which one to ask, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. Is there legal liability here on somebody that works with the executive branch? Personal liability if the court would entertain, or if this bill passes, does it create legal liability for an executive branch member?
So, Representative, this bill creates additional liabilities, but it more expands upon liabilities as it presently exists. If you have a sales tax wrongly collected, there is an avenue to try to dispute that. However, it's an administrative appeal process that can be dragged out for years. Ultimately, the taxes that I'm trying to ultimately vindicate are rather minimal, and the cost of litigation is far more than what the individuals ultimately paid. I looked at it today. The price of gold is $93.82 per gram. Silver is $32.74 per ounce. So ultimately, if you were to make those purchases right now, you'd be paying $5.63 on a gram of gold of sales tax, and $1.96 taxes on an ounce of silver. Needless to say, attorneys are far more expensive on that. But ultimately, as to your constitutional question, our Constitution is quite clear. The governor can make line item vetoes on spending, but that's it. On the revenue side, that's up to us as a legislature. He either has to veto the whole bill, sign the whole bill, or just refuse to act on the whole bill. This is a revenue matter, and as a result, I would say that the Constitution is clear, but ultimately we cannot litigate this without House Bill 2 because KRS 49.220 gives sole jurisdiction to the Tax Board of Appeals, the administrative agency I was referencing. The only way for this to be resolved in court, as you were suggesting that you would like to have happen, would be by adoption of this bill to create the judicial remedy.
Just a follow-up question, if you
Please.
Again, I apologize for my lack of legal knowledge here. But if we pass this bill, does it possibly create liability for damages from executive members doing what they did, which in their opinion, they were just following the law? When I tried to look this up in the Constitution. Again, I'm not an attorney, so I'm trying to read this, and it says the governor shall have the power to disapprove any part or parts of appropriation bills embracing distinct items. And the bill says it was an appropriation bill. It was House Bill 8 last year in the title. So maybe I'm missing something here. Trust me, it took me 6 years to tell people in the legislature that coal wasn't a mineral. All right, so I understand. I'm a non-legal guy here, and I don't want to do anything that could put somebody in executive branch or legislative branch or any power of government with personal liability over a decision that they made for the benefit, in their eyes, of the state. Does that make sense?
I understand your concern. So the bill creates joint and several liability, which indicates that it can come from ultimately any of these sources. So there's personal liability upon the issue, those who issued the order, so the executive branch heads, governor, Department of Revenue head. But also there's a provision that makes clear that it can also come from their budget as well. So it's ultimately up to the defendants to decide how any liabilities get paid. It's up to the courts, and that's just a matter for litigation on that. So that would be my response.
Further on that issue, I would say that liability is not created unless the executive branch persists with their interpretation that they have an actual line item veto authority in a revenue bill as opposed to an appropriation. So if they come off of that interpretation, there is no liability that they will incur. It will simply be a refund that would be putting an effect to what the bill did in last session. Any other questions? I'm just going to check and see if anybody else for a return. Anybody else with questions or comments? Seeing none, Representative Bojanowski.
Thank you. This is also a clarification. So the $1,000 penalty, is that, like, say I buy gold one day, I would be able to collect a $1,000 penalty because I made a purchase on one day, or is it for every day since then that I purchased it?
So it's every day since you purchased it, and that is, of course, assuming the executive branch continues with the collection on this sales tax that we expressly exempted.
So even if I only made one transaction, it would be more than one $1,000 penalty.
Right. It's because it's an ongoing violation. That's all funds that, frankly, you were entitled to keep upon making that purchase.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Representative Banta.
Yes.
Representative Bojanowski.
May I explain my no vote?
Briefly, please.
I'm a no. I think I know the discussion is about the legality of the veto and the non, but I can't sit here and support taking away taxes for gold bars when parents are paying taxes for diapers.
Representative Bowling.
Yes.
Representative Bray.
Yes.
Representative Bridges.
Yep.
Representative Brown.
Pass.
Representative Dietz.
Yes.
Representative Fleming.
Aye.
Representative Freeland.
Yes.
Representative Fugit.
Yes.
Representative Gentry.
Briefly explain my vote, please.
Briefly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a tough one for me because, like I said, I understood the original intent of the bill. I don't understand why there wasn't any kind of claim filed on the bill, and I'm really trying to understand what's going on here. It has a sniff of a political stunt. I hope that's not the case. I'm going to pass right now and try to dive into this a little harder and reserve my right to change my vote on the floor. Thank you.
Representative Hart. Representative Lockett.
Yes.
Representative McPherson.
Yes.
Representative Riley. Yes. Representative Stevenson. Representative Thomas.
Aye.
Representative Truitt.
Yes.
Representative Upchurch.
Yes.
Representative Williams.
Yes.
Chair Petrie.
Yes.
Okay, one no, two passes.
House Bill 2 as amended by Committee Sub 2, having received 19 yes votes, 1 nay vote, and 2 passes, will be reported with favorable expression that same should pass on the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next up on the agenda, we have for discussion only Kentucky Exposition Center Redevelopment Plan, Phase 2. Correction, we have 16 yea votes, 1 no vote, 2 passes on House Bill 2 as amended by Committee Sub 2, and still will be reported with favorable expression that same should pass on the floor. If each of you will check and make sure the mics are close enough to you, the light is really green, and then if each of you will introduce yourselves for the record, then I'll place you under oath.
David Beck, President CEO.
David Wallace, Vice Chairman.
Very good. If each of you will raise your right hands, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. And what we have really quickly is Kentucky Exposition Center Redevelopment Plan. We had a Phase 1, and I don't know that we're fully completed, but we're far along, if not. And when Phase 1 was done, there was a Phase 2 that was anticipated. And in order to have the funding move forward on Phase 2, we need to make sure there is a real plan for that, and that the General Assembly agrees worthy enough to move forward. Please proceed.
Well, good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to visit with you this morning. On behalf of our board and all of our staff team, we want to express appreciation to each of you for the support you provide our facilities. We have information that was presented to packets, and we have some slides that if you're interested, we'll be glad to share with you that gives you an overview of our property. Many of you visit there often, but we thought the visuals might be helpful where you can see the existing property, but also see where the Phase 1 buildings would be, but also the Phase 2. In addition to that, we'll be glad to address any questions you have about the projects, but also wanted to tell you that 2024 was a great year for our facility. We broke all records. In fact, media would be surprised to know that the Kentucky Exposition Center by itself, not including the convention center downtown, had the highest attendance of any facility like it in the nation. And that's because of things you have done. You've changed the law to give us the flexibility to be competitive around the world, particularly North America, to bring in clients, but also provide innovative ways of improving the property so it does meet the expectations of our guests, our clients.
Now, I appreciate that, but that means you got a harder uphill battle if it's doing that well with Phase 1. Why do we need to move to Phase 2?
Because, Mr. Chairman, as you know well, we're out of space, and many of our clients are using both facilities at the same time. We continue to see growth in these facilities. The documents that we have indicate showing that we will continue to see increase. For example, with the Phase 2 project by itself, once those keys are handed over, we'll be able to see a way to fill those up pretty quick with existing clients. So to my right is the chairman of the renovation committee. He's vice chairman of the board. He's been very involved, he and his committee, day to day as we've gone through the process. And of course, to my left, our chairman of the board. And it's a team effort, everybody working together. Would you like to see the slides on the screen? Would that be helpful, or?
Your preference on how
Okay.
you proceed, just to understand that you've got to get the case. So
Yeah,
I know everybody's got documents in their packet. I'm going to assume
Okay.
everybody's familiar with Phase 1 that has been in the General Assembly previously. Phase 2, you may want to flesh that out a little bit and state the case why, reference the packet, or whatever you so choose.
Okay. The in the package, you'll see the drawings, the sketch of the property, and you'll see where the Phase 1 building is, where the Phase 2 building will go. The bottom line is that we will continue to keep the doors open and operate during the time. Once Phase 1 is completed, then we'll tear down at the building and start Phase 2. Mr. Wallace, you want to talk more of the specifics of the?
Right. If I can just give you a quick update where we are on Phase 1. Phase 1, we have a construction manager. Everything, or those phases now, the bid packs are ready. Some have already gone out. We'll start demolition within the next probably 2 weeks or a week on New Market Hall, and the enabling projects are in place to go forward. As part of the initial enabling projects, that is getting water lines moved, electricity moved. Some of those items actually will benefit the Phase 2. Phase 1 is a 350,000 square foot new building that will be able to have another 3,000 cattle during a livestock show, another 90 basketball courts, another 40 or 50 volleyball courts, things that we need to get that return on investment that we said we were going to have 2 years ago. Phase 2 project actually takes down, once Phase 1 is at completion, the big part of Phase 2 is taking down the West Wing. West Wing was opened in 1956. And then added on to with West Hall in the mid-70s. It is our problem with that is you worked well for 70 years, but it's just not the class of facility we need for livestock, nor for other events to get our return on investment per square foot that we think we need to generate for the Commonwealth. One of the things I think is you'll see in the economic impact, if you look at the updated phase, we now, at stabilization, once Phase 2 is done, we'll be generating about $683 million a year in economic impact, about $32 million a year in state sales tax, and generating 856,000 room nights per year in the Jefferson County area. From my standpoint, as a banker, that's a pretty good ROI for what we do out there. Phase 2 will also include some updates to our food facilities and also some efficiencies that we'll add to the South Wing. If you've ever been to our South Wing during the Farm Machinery Show, which we just concluded, or any other event, we don't have a back of the house there. So people are walking through, our employees, with garbage through crowds, because when South Wing was originally built, there's no service corridor on the, I guess that is the east side. And so that Phase 2 would include that, so we can have better food prep areas spaced throughout the facility. This will be, even though we are a world-class facility, will be more of a world-class facility. Chairman Petrie, just to let you know that that new 350,000 square feet that we're going to have for the Farm Machinery Show alone, we have a waiting list that will fill that up in year 1 of opening.
Very good. And that goes to, we do have some questions, but first goes to measurement, what we're talking about. So is it just that, trust me, this is rhetorical, is it just that y'all want a bigger, better place? Or is it that you're having to compete with places around the country and these are functional needs in order to compete effectively?
It is functional needs, and the clients we now have are growing. They want to expand. For example, even the sporting we have inside, now we're taking that some downtown and using convention center. We're out of space at both of those for some of our events. For the month of July, highest attendance of any facility in North America, just the month of July alone. We need additional space. We want to keep the clients we have. We want to allow them to facilitate to grow, but also fill in the dates in between. To do that, we need the infrastructure, which you provide support for, as well as additional space. But as Mr. Wallace mentioned, when you build a building in 1956, the height of the ceilings are a limiting factor. The columns are a limiting factor. Just overall infrastructure itself. So those upgrades are pretty competitive. As many of you attend meetings around the country, you see what we're competing with. So we want to keep our clients happy, but also get the second and third look to close the deal on another client coming in.
Very good. On the timing issue, phase one would be considered 50, 60, 70, 80%, 40% complete?
No, phase one is 20%.
Okay. And how does that tag up with phase two? I know you have demolition, so
Correct.
if phase one is around the 20% mark, then what kind of timing are we looking to hand off from phase one to phase two, and then ultimate completion of both phases?
Current completion date, let me start and we'll work backwards. Current completion date, opening date for phase one is December 31st of 2026. It will actually be finished in October. There's about a 30-40 day of trying out period from that. So that's where that is. We're, 13 months from when it'll actually be finished. But during that time period, there are portions of phase two that we can go ahead and start on. One is getting those utilities run to phase two, so we're going to be saving money. One of our biggest problems, Mr. Chairman, is timing on getting electricals, getting switch gears and generators. Our switch gears, we're probably looking at 51, 52 week lead time. Sometimes they're telling us as much as 80. So with phase two, we're going to need to start getting some of those in so we can get that running now. But we would be in the position to use some phase two monies within the next in the next 3 to 4 months with our enabling projects. So we'll be ready to start that.
So you're looking at an economy of scale on making sure people don't come on site and have to leave and come back and redo work. I understand that, as well as timing. If you were to try to do this as phase one and complete, phase two and complete, you've got extra costs. I don't know if you tried to estimate that, but sounds like significant extra cost.
We know that if we pushed phase one and tried to open it at the state fair, it's about another $10 million in cost in just labor. The other thing that we're fighting and really worried about is our steel and structural packages, our precast of what we know what a budgeted item is now, and we've got those bid packs ready to go out, but we continue to worry about the cost. The more it's colloquial to say, but time is money on this project.
If I may add to that, just like you mentioned, we thought we'd be able to have the phase one building by the August of next year's state fair, but looking at the numbers of additional overtime labor plus cost of products, so you had to evaluate every aspect of that. Delaying it to later in the fall will save us money, but also make sure we got the infrastructure to install once we have it there. So it's an economical thing. We'll get a better buy if we can make that all happen at the same time.
So if I just heard you right, then if we do it this way, then there'll be money you can rebate to the General Assembly. Is that what I just heard?
We sure hope that would be the case.
There's a new term I'm becoming familiar with, Mr. Chairman, is value engineering.
Very good. Representative Bojanowski.
Yes, so very exciting. I spent a lot of years walking the West Wing when I was a kid and checking out the animals at the fair. My question is, do you receive any federal funding, either for phase one, phase two, ongoing operations that may be at risk with some of the cuts this current administration is?
No, we're not receiving any federal funding. We have not. We don't see that in the future.
Thank you.
Representative Gentry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good to see you, Dave. Dave, Dr. Lynn. These guys are some of my champions in Louisville. As many of you know, Louisville is an economic engine of the state of Kentucky, and the work these guys do are the leaders in bringing in the types of tax revenues we really need to be focused on, which is revenues that come from non-residents. A lot of the things that they do, most of the people that come and spend their money here in Louisville and Kentucky at their events are out-of-state individuals, and in A&R and legislature, we're really trying to lower the overall tax burden on our residents. And to me, the most common sense way to do that is to invest in things that are going to generate more revenue from non-residents. I've been saying that over and over and over for several years, and to all my colleagues, this is one of the perfect examples and opportunities we can do that, to maximize our revenues that we bring in from this type of sector of spenders. My only question is, and you may have said this in your presentation, I'm writing notes, I might have missed it, but compared now to if both phases were done, what types of growth from a tax revenue stance are we looking at, so to speak?
Currently, if we're on sales on just state tax alone, we're basically doubling it from this to when phase 2 is open and stabilized. Economic impact, we're again more than doubling economic impact between today's dollars and stabilization. With our CSL, is the company we used to do a very in-depth analysis of economic impact and all that. Room nights, David, I think room nights, I don't know what the room night number is now.
The goal is to get to at least 1 million room nights on a year, and we'll estimate about 850,000 to 900,000.
Make sure your light is on and you're close enough.
Pardon me,
please.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
The goal is to get to 1 million room nights, and this already we anticipate will bring somewhere around 850,000 to 900,000 room nights, so it will be a growth. And when you look at tax revenue, also what we're seeing is increase in the rack rate for those facilities. So that in itself increases the tax, both sales tax and all the local tourism taxes are added to that.
And I might want to point out, we will be at the million when you add in kick down. Obviously we also operate Kentucky International Convention Center, and with the room nights that will generate, along with the room nights we're talking about, are only at the Expo Center.
76% of the room nights in that region come from our two facilities, with over 100 countries last year being represented and people from all the different states that come through. That has a huge impact on the hotels, but also the restaurants and other aspects of our community, supporting those guests when they come to Louisville or the Commonwealth.
Thank you. And if I remember, I
Thank
think you said maybe 32 million on sales tax is what I heard.
Yes, that's in our presentation.
Yeah, and then I'll be remiss if I don't take this opportunity. Representative Gentry and others, Louisville is a good economic engine from which all across the Commonwealth there's gasoline in the form of tax dollars from every single county that goes into projects like this, and a tune of $400 million or thereabouts on phase 1 and phase 2 that gets poured in to really help that economic engine that is localized and regionalized, from which there is also a sales tax state that comes back out to help. So this is a long-term project, but I want to make sure we understand that in Todd County and Bell County and Rockcastle County and everywhere else, there's money being poured into that engine every day. Appreciate the work on it. Representative Lockett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was there this past weekend for the farm machinery show and the tractor pull. And one of the things that I noticed when I was pulling on to the property was parking, or the lack of parking. I actually had to park way out in the middle of nowhere, I think, and walk a very long way. So when I look at the plans, phase 1 looks like it takes up a lot of existing parking. Can you talk about plans maybe for adding parking, what you're going to do to replace the spots that are being taken? What I saw, there were cars sitting in mud. There were trucks parked all over the grass. There were people parked on curbs. You couldn't drive through hardly at all. Could you address that, please?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it, and I can't believe we made you park in the back. I'll have to get with Mr. Beck on that after we're done.
I would totally agree with that.
Yeah. this property during construction will take up, the construction area is about 10 acres. If we look at, go 5 years back when we had Cardinal Stadium still there, Cardinal Stadium took up 16 acres. So we're actually going to be a little bit better than we were when Cardinal Stadium is there. One of the things that we don't have right now that is included in the phase 1 and phase 2 project is better wayfinding. Probably when you came, there was probably 400, 500 parking spots throughout in certain lots that were not available. So one of the things we're going to do is use artificial intelligence and some of our camera operations to let us know how many extra spots are available in a lot. So when people drive by, or our people will know there's spots available that we can get you into a better spot. So we're going to get better utilization. Our traffic studies think that will give us about a 30% more efficient with our parking. We know we are going to have to pave some more parking. We are waiting. There's at least one other piece of property that might become available, about 20 acres, that we would love to go ahead and get. We thought we would have it by now, but we don't, and that would be somewhere we would use. So if you look at the very, very best case, we have 22,000 parking spaces on the property plus. In reality, it's about good usable parking is about 15,000. So we are planning for that. We know we're going to need it. But we think when we look back when Cardinal Stadium was there, we're actually picking up about 6 acres of parking.
It is an ongoing challenge facility-wise, and even off-site parking with shuttles, everything being considered. And as Mr. Wallace said, paving new lots. We've chosen not to do any of that might be developed. Don't want to waste that dollar. But the plan is we've got to have a way to address the parking going forward. We're using more ride share and trying to accommodate that. We're seeing an increase in that. That seems to be a trend throughout the country. And so we know that will relieve some of it, but not all of it. We've got to have some additional parking spaces. Acknowledge that. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else seeking recognition for comment or question? Representative McPherson?
Yeah, so I was there Wednesday night at the tractor pull, so appreciate what you all do and what a class show you put on. Then we had our Secretary of Agriculture confirmed on Thursday night. By Saturday, she was here. You know, Kentucky punches well above its weight, and people all over the country know where we are because of the National Farm Machinery Show, different things. I follow a guy out in Minnesota and watch him farm, and his last comment the other day was, I'm headed down to the Farm Machinery Show in Louisville. And then he was discussing how you should pronounce Louisville. But that just gives us national recognition all over the state, all over the nation, and the world. And I thought it was so important that as soon as she was confirmed, next thing we see is you all walking through with our Commissioner of Agriculture, you know, the first place she goes. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And that show, the National Farm Machinery Show, is owned by the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We have 6 shows that you own, and we manage those shows on behalf of the Commonwealth and the Fair Board. And that one show, the 270 we had this last year, that's 20% of the operating income for both facilities. That's the goose that laid the golden eggs. So we got to do everything we can to protect that show and continue to find ways for it to grow. And with the waiting list now, we will fill it with the new renovations coming forward.
Very good. Seeing no other members seeking recognition for comment or question, I just want to close with this for everybody's benefit. The money has not been greenlit on phase 2. It takes legislative action. I would expect a resolution to be on the topic of whether to approve or disapprove. I would ask all members to check with these 3 presenters and anybody on A&R staff if they have questions. It's likely that the issue will come up for a truncated discussion next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda for discussion only, we have House Bill 545, sponsored by me.
Secretary Johnson and Joe McDaniel.
I think we may have Secretary Johnson, Mr. McDaniel, I think. Anyone that's coming up on that one? Very good. If you will make sure that the mics are on, the green lights are really green, they're sufficiently close to you. If you'll introduce yourselves for the record, please. Closer or really green?
Okay, really green.
There we
okay.
go. Yeah.
I'm Holly Johnson. I'm the Secretary of the Cabinet for Finance and Administration.
Very good. And who do you have with you?
I'll let Joe introduce himself.
Joe McDaniel, Executive Director, Office of the Controller.
Very good. If each of you raise your right hands, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I will.
Very good. So what we have is this. Everyone affectionately understands the claims bill. It's a usual thing that we go through. There's no particularly large issues at stake in this. It is a normal process. We have claims that for odd reasons need to be paid through this process other than normal process, I would call it. The reason claims bill, General Assembly has to approve the payment of those claims. There are some, and they're in a resolution already, that have no issue whatsoever. What I am interested in today is those that are really not in the resolution. And I just want to ask, so it's not a political thing, it's not a gotcha thing, it's like, okay, help me understand and make sure that we're on good firm ground and we're moving the correct direction from year to year with the claims bill. So for instance, we have several items, and I'll go over those in a moment, in the claims, or what was presented to us for the claims bill, for which there was not a contract executed, or for which services were rendered but the invoicing didn't take place the right way. Most importantly, those are those that for which there was no contract in place, which creates concern for me on liability issues. So what actually is the mark of performance in the contract if it wasn't signed? And really want to make sure that we're not getting in a trend. I don't see it yet, but I'm always on the front end of it, making sure we're not seeing something that needs to be corrected statutorily to prevent services from running forward without a contract being in fact in place. So the first one I've got is Capital Solutions LLC. It was around $14,700 without following proper procurement procedures of executing a personal service contract. You can speak on that one or in general on what I'm contexting.
Okay. I'm going to let our controller.
Thanks, Representative, for having us here today. So that question, that is with one of our boards, a professional occupational board. The board did approve that contract at a board meeting in board minutes. It was an administrative issue where it was not entered into EMARS in time to process that payment. Okay. So that's what happened there. But the board did approve that in one of their meetings in board minutes.
Good. So this one, without following proper procurement procedures, it sounds like when the services were being rendered, there was a contract in place.
The board had approved the work with that vendor, and so I would say that it just wasn't entered into EMARS at the time that it needed to be.
Had been signed by the parties, just not indexed.
As far as I'm aware, sir, yes.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. Next one I've got up is, and I will not be good with these names, Cara Soft Technology Corporation. This one's a little bit different issue that's related. It's a small dollar figure under $2,000, but invoice revisions for services created a backlog of invoices covering multiple years. Any comments on that?
The context for that representative and chairman of the committee would be that there were extensive discussions between both parties on those invoices, and so those invoices were not being processed for payment. It really wasn't as much of a contract issue. It was making sure that the Commonwealth's paying for what we have received in goods and services, and because it crossed multiple years due to the biennium budget, we are coming to the committee to ask for approval on those. And I believe there were two for Carasoft, and they're the same.
That's what I was getting ready to ask, if the second one is the same. It was for a little larger dollar figure, around $54,000 or so, but it looks like it's the same type of issue.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with those two types that we've dealt with so far, is there anything that statutorily needs to be revised or otherwise to make sure there's a better process and procedure, or is this within guides?
I don't think so.
I would say it's within the guidelines of what KRS, the KRS for legislative claims allows us to do.
Understood. But what I'm after more than anything, is there anything that you would ask be different by statute to assist in making sure this happens less and less and less, something to assist you in dealing with the claims as they come in?
I'm not aware of a need at this time.
Okay. Well, if it turns out that there's something that pops up, please let us know. Next up, I have Johnson County Fiscal Court for around $15,000. Looks like there was not a valid contract in place at time of service.
So this was an MOU contract that's handled at the park system. The details, I think you've been provided those, the same that we have, sir. That's what we know about that claim, other than we did validate that it is an obligation of the Commonwealth and it is due from the Commonwealth.
So in this one, no contract in place as far as we know, signed by the parties that set the markers for performance, nor liability, nor indemnification, and all those type things.
According to what we were able to discover, I'm unaware of that.
Fair enough. Next one I've got is, next one I have is Justice AV, JAV, no new contract being in place.
This had to do with a contract that had expired and working on an extension of a contract, and it didn't happen in the time frame that it should have happened.
So on this one, no contract in place, no signatures, no performance markers. Happened after the fact.
A previous contract had
A previous contract had been in place, and we were using the same contractual terms while we were working on the extension.
So was there an extension to the prior contract?
They were still working on those negotiations.
Okay, so we have a contract that completed, no extension, no new contract. We have services being rendered without a contract, is what it sounds like. I'm just making sure I'm hearing accurately.
I would
say technically that would be true. Okay. Parties moving forward under the terms of the previous contract.
Very good. Next one I have is Justice AV, JAV, around 13.5. This may be the same issue with no new contract being in place. Is this the same context?
Yes, Chairman. Those three, all for justice, were all with the same state agency. That's the Personnel Board.
Okay.
So
the explanation on the next one is the same, and it's the same
sir.
type of issue.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Next I have is Lead for America, around $34,000. This one is a little more interesting on the facts, but it looks like we have problems with personnel on a contract returning property, as well as we did not have a properly executed contract again.
So with this one, sir, it does look like the vendor was having difficulties registering in our vendor self-service system. We did investigate that. We're unable to conclude that that was a problem with the vendor or even the state agency, but that was what was reported, was that the AmeriCorps volunteer did not register as the Kentucky vendor, which prevented a payment to be rendered for services.
Very good. And on my information, I'm not sure what you have in front of me. I've got the new to state government agency executive director did not properly execute the contract.
That's what was originally reported by that department.
Okay. Next up, I have Magellan RX Management for around $222,000. Vendor performed rebate services after the contract ended. So this is maybe another one where we didn't have a contract extension or a new contract in place. I'm just trying to narrow down the context.
Yeah, so this was actually under the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. They were transitioning to a new vendor to provide those services for Medicaid. They were in that transitioning to a new vendor. Magellan continued to provide service for that 1 month while that transition to a new contract with a new vendor that had been awarded was happening.
Very good. Next up, I have Phillips Healthcare, around $48,900. Invoice was above and beyond agency spending authority, if I'm catching that correctly.
This was the KCTCS system, and the facts that you have are the facts that we have been provided.
Okay, so no spending authority above a certain amount, and it was spent above that amount.
At the university system.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Next up I have is Proactive LTC Consulting, around $5,700. Services were performed without a contract in place. Agency missed deadline to renew the contract. Is that the real context of it?
This was a similar situation. The extension should have occurred.
Okay. Next up I have is Sander Resources for a little over $29,000. Looks like we have another contract issue about modification ended. Not sure if we had a contract in place or not.
There was a contract in place. What happened was the spend, and so the agency, what should have occurred was the work should have been stopped while modifications were happening. I don't know. That was Public Service Commission,
Sure.
but that was what happened was the spend on the contract had reached its dollar amount.
Yep, so I've got work, quote, unquote, work continued without a valid contract in place. And I know y'all are going off the same information. I'm just asking for context to make sure I'm reading it right, that's all.
That's what we were able to validate as well, sir.
Okay. Next I have is University of Kentucky Research Foundation for around $443,000 plus. Vendor performed services thinking a contract extension was in place. Final approval had not actually been given to the new contract, so we don't have the contract in place fully yet.
There was an existing contract. The vendor was working off of that contract while an extension would have been granted and a modification. That is the Cabinet for Health and Family Services within DCBS, and that was again, they had a contract, an existing contract, and they were needing to add dollars to it or extend it, and services continued because we were unable to stop services for what they were providing at that time.
Gotcha. So I appreciate you coming in, going over the things. It's just I want to make sure that I understand, and if there is anything we need to do or collaboration with you to minimize these issues, we'll be glad to. I'm sure everyone would be. Number two, I want everybody to understand, including the public, that good gracious, Secretary Johnson, how much do y'all go through in a year? It's immense. These are small, and this is a relatively small volume. So everyone put that in proper context. This is identifying for claims bill, which is a small piece of the puzzle. Just making sure that we're not trending in the wrong way, or if there's something we need to do to assist. Representative Bojanowski.
Yes, Chair Petrie, I think the question's for you. So I was looking in House Bill 554 and didn't see the specific line item numbers that you were sharing and asking about, and I didn't see it in our packet. Is that something that is in a separate document?
Those issues were left out because we had insufficient information about whether to move forward on those. If you'll see, much like the last issue taken up on the agenda, this one is for discussion only. I would anticipate a truncated discussion next week to deal with the totality of the claims information that's been brought to me.
Thank you. Helps me understand.
Yep. Anyone else seeking recognition for comment or question? Seeing none, thank y'all very much. That was very helpful. And again, if there's anything we need to do, please let us know. We are adjourned.
Thank you.